ABS Media Demo.
Hello and welcome to ibbusinessandmanagement.com. I'm Mr. Burton, site author of ibbusinessandmanagement.com. Today we will be looking at topic 5.2, Costs and Revenues in the Operations Management Unit of the IB Diploma Business and Management course. Glad to have you here. Hope you learned something today. 5.2, Costs and Revenues. Let's get started. First thing to probably make clear is that costs, we are taking the perspective of the business, the firm, those that are producing the good. So a consumer might talk about the cost of a t-shirt, but this is not, we're not interested in the purchase price, the cost of the t-shirt to the consumer. We are interested on how much it would cost that business to produce the t-shirt. Okay, costs. Business expenditure on producing goods and services. Revenues, money a business receives from the sale of its products to its customers. And then profit or loss is the difference in between. Profit, which is what all businesses are aiming to produce and probably to maximize, in most cases to maximize. Profit is where costs are less than the revenues, and loss when revenues are not enough to cover the costs of producing the goods or services. And also there are additional revenues as well that are available to some businesses, and these are non-operating income. Revenues are different to sales of assets and interest and dividends on other investments that the business may have made. So specifically we're talking about revenues. This is sales revenues. It's from selling the business's goods and services to its customers. There are different types of costs, and this is very, very, very important. We need to make it clear. There is a lot of key information that comes through in this 5.2 unit, costs and revenues. It won't only be likely to come up in the exam, very likely to impact in your internal assessment as well. Costs and revenues, almost any decision that the business is going to make is going to impact on the cost of production and the revenues that are being brought in. A fixed, variable, and a messy combination of the two. These are the two distinct types of costs that we need to get our heads around. Fixed costs are those that have to be paid out, and they're not dependent on how much the firm is producing, sometimes called overheads. Now, even if you are producing nothing, you still have to pay these costs. They are things like your rent, the rates on the premises, insurance, interest and principal on those long-term loans. Fixed costs, they've got to be paid regardless of how much you're producing. Doesn't matter if you're producing 0 units of output or 2 million units of output. These costs stay the same. Rents, rates on the premises, and insurance are classic examples. Now the other type of cost is the variable cost. Now these are output dependent. As you produce more, your variable costs increase as well. So raw material costs, wages of production workers, etc. The more you produce, the more material you need to buy in, the higher your raw material cost. The more you produce, the more workers you need on the production line directly inputting into the production process, the more your wage and salary bill is going to be. And then we've got the messy combination of the two. So a cost which might have a fixed part charge, but after a certain level of usage may rise dependent on production levels. Now the classic example here is a cell phone plan. Semi-variable, you've got that monthly upfront fee, and then depending on how much you use it, you have got additional charges on top. And internet fees are semi-fixed dependent on the plan used as well. It actually gets a little more complicated than that, and you will see variable costs and direct costs being used. Now, direct costs, they're specifically related to the cost of a project of a single product. A direct cost, output of a single product. Fixed costs, indirect costs. So variable costs and direct costs are the same type of costs. These are costs that change with the level of production, how much the firm is producing. Fixed costs and indirect costs do not change. Businesses that sell a range of products, we're going to talk about variable costs and fixed costs. And businesses that sell a single product, here we have variable costs and fixed costs. And we will be talking mostly about firms that sell a single product because it leads into the all-important break-even analysis which comes through in 5.3. So, but for all intents and purposes, variable costs and direct costs are essentially the same. These costs increase with an increase in production and decrease with a decrease in production. Fixed costs and indirect costs are the same. They remain a constant. Doesn't matter how much we are producing. Let's have a go at doing some classification here. So try and classify the following costs for an airline company as being either fixed or variable. Advertising and promotion, fixed costs. Airport charges, they're variable because the more flights we lay on for our customers, the higher our airport charges are going to be. Fuel, a variable cost. The more we fly, the more fuel we burn, the more it's going to cost us. Remuneration, this is the pay of administration staff. This is not going to change the more or the less we fly. Staff in the head office are not going to be affected. Our wage bills, our salary bills, they are not going to be affected by how many flights we lay on for our customers. Whereas the remuneration of flight attendants may well be. They might be paid on an on-flight basis. The more flights we fly, can I say that? The more flights we fly, the more flight attendants we need to employ, and therefore this is going to be a variable cost. More flight attendants we need to employ, the higher our wage and salary bills. Right, cost formulas. Now these are not given to you in the formula sheets with your IB business and management examinations, but they're important for you to get your head around nonetheless. Average costs, we're just talking about the cost per product, so that's total cost divided by the quantity of products that we're producing. Average fixed costs, we'll have a look at our total fixed costs and divide that by the quantity. Total costs, our total cost of production are made up of both of those fixed costs and variable costs we've just looked at. So total costs we can measure as being total fixed costs plus total variable costs. Our average cost, we can calculate that by average fixed cost plus average variable cost. Flashing at you, because it's quite important, marginal cost. We're looking at the cost of producing the next unit of output. For example, if the cost of producing 100 units is $120, the total cost of producing 100 units of a good is $120. And the cost of producing the 101st unit, 101 units of the good is $125. Then the marginal cost between producing 100 units and 101 units is $5. So that would be a marginal cost. These are not given to you in IB Business and Management examinations. A question in Hong for you to get your head around, 5.2.2 on page 630. And just like we have cost formula, which we need to be familiar with, we need to know a different revenue formula as well. Total revenue, this is a key one that you have to know, not given to you again. Total revenue, the price of the good times the quantity that we are producing and selling. So, the price of a t-shirt, $15. We sell 1,000 of them. The total revenue, $15,000. Average revenue, total revenue divided by quantity. We're just talking about the price of a good here. So, total revenue, $15,000. We've produced 1,000 t-shirts. The average revenue is $15, as is the price. So price is equal to average revenue. And marginal revenue is just that difference from selling one more unit of whatever it is that we've produced. So if we produce 1,000 t-shirts and that brings in $15,000, if we produce 1,001 t-shirts and that brings in, my maths is going to pot here. If we produce 1,001 t-shirts and that brings in $1,515, then the marginal revenue producing that extra t-shirt is $15. A nice wee question here in Hong, again 5.2.3, that will enable you to understand and do some calculations on these revenue formulas. And we have this non-operating income which we need to be familiar with as well. It's non-sales revenue, but important nonetheless. So we're talking about things like subsidies. The government will pay for the running of schools and hospitals, or pay towards the running of schools and hospitals. Government grants, these are defined as just being one-off payments. Fundraising for a business, interest and dividends on investments that the business may have, and the sale of assets. These are all types of non-operating income, non-sales revenue. They're not related to the sales of goods and services that the business is producing. Contribution, such a key point, such a key point. Listen up, this is dead important. Now the average contribution, we have got types of costs. We've got fixed costs and we've got variable costs. An average contribution is defined as price less average variable cost. So, if the price of our t-shirt is $15 and it costs $5 in direct inputs to make that t-shirt, so the labour, the cotton, etc., etc., the price minus the average variable cost will leave us with something we call the contribution. Price of $15, average variable cost $5, we've got a contribution of $10. Now, each t-shirt produced after the average variable costs are factored out can be used towards paying the fixed costs of a business, and then once enough t-shirts are sold and the fixed costs are all paid, then the t-shirts can start to contribute to the profit. The profit, contribution to profit, only once our fixed costs are paid.
Show me.
Let's run you through an example to illustrate this. We have a cake, a bakery is making cakes. Now, this very delicious cake sells for the incredibly cheap price of $1. and I decided on that price to help me with my maths. Not that my maths is bad at all, just makes it easier to explain. So the cake sells for $1, and on average the variable cost of making this cake is 85 cents. On average, remember the bakery is typically not making one cake, they're making thousands of cakes. On average, the variable cost of making this cake is 85 cents. Okay? That is things like the flour, the chocolate, etc., etc. Directly related to the cost of producing the cake. Nothing to do with the rent of the premises, the salary of the CEO. So if it does cost 85 cents to make and the firm is selling it for $1, that leaves 15 cents to contribute towards paying the fixed costs. Take enough of those 15 cents, add them up, we can pay the fixed costs, and then after that, the 15 cents per cake is going towards the profit. So once going towards profit if the fixed costs are now covered. Total contribution. Again, it's just average contribution, but we're looking at across all the goods all the products that the businesses is selling. So again, total contribution. This is total contribution towards paying a fixed cost or towards a profit after those fixed costs have been accounted for. Total contribution. Total sales revenue of this firm is $100,000. So 100,000 cakes are being sold at $1 each. Total sales revenue $100,000. Variable costs, we're after total variable costs with our total contribution. So variable costs are 85 cents per cake. Total variable costs is $85,000. Fixed costs of $12,000. This is the rent, insurance, very low paid CEO. Fixed cost per cake, 12 cents. And then our profit can be calculated. So profit equals revenues less costs. Our revenue here is $100,000. Our total variable costs $85,000. Our total fixed costs $12,000. These are our total costs, right? We add them together. Total variable costs plus total fixed costs equals total costs. So $100,000 minus $97,000 leaves us with a profit of $3,000. Okay, contribution, price less average variable cost. Thinking about it in terms of negative contributions and positive contributions. So we're looking at when a contribution starts to contribute to profit. Now we get a profit with price less average variable costs. Profit only after fixed costs have been able to be paid. So profit, total revenue less total costs, as long as that's positive, we're in the profit territory. Looking at it individually, for an individual product averaged across individual products. So average revenue less the average cost. As long as that's positive, the firm will be making a profit. And we can have a look at it as well. We know that average costs are average fixed costs plus average variable costs. So the firm will be making a profit if the price is greater than both average fixed costs and average variable costs added together. Remember, price is interchangeable with average revenue. Average revenue is the price, and average cost is broken down into average fixed costs and average variable costs. Now remember, the defining feature of fixed costs is that they don't change regardless of how much the firm is producing. They don't change regardless. So if the firm is producing and selling enough, eventually the contribution is going to pay the fixed cost and then start to contribute to the profit of the firm. Price minus average variable costs. The variable costs are covered and some contribution to fixed costs are being made. A contribution is important because, and this often comes up in exams as well, it's important because businesses often build in some of their fixed cost components into their pricing. But as long as the product that they're selling makes some sort of contribution, it may well be worth continuing to produce and sell that product. So remember, contribution is the difference between sales revenue and total variable costs. And that difference is then used to contribute to paying fixed costs. So if a hotel can cover all its variable costs of staying open in the off-season, even though technically it's making a loss, it's not being able to quite cover its mortgage repayments, the salary of the CEO, etc., etc. As long as it's covering the variable cost of letting out the room, it'll still be making some sort of contribution towards paying the insurance, paying the CEO, paying the mortgage bill. It's making some sort of contribution there, helping out, and then in the on-season, when they can ramp up costs and the business starts humming again, then those little payments towards those fixed costs have already been made, and once all costs, fixed costs and variable costs are covered, then the firm is making a profit. So it helps accelerate the firm towards making the profit, even if technically it is making a loss because it's not quite covering its fixed costs in that off season. Right, high level students, listen up. An analysis of contribution for firms that sell multiple products. I'm going to run you through this with an example of a cafe. A cafe produces produces and sells 6 different types of goods here. And keep in the back of your mind, please, that this cafe has $8,600 per month in overheads. So that's rent, salaries, admin staff, etc., etc. So the cafe's got a name, Modax Cafe. Right, hot chocolate, latte, the mocha, cup of tea, juice and water are the 6 products that this cafe is selling. Different prices for each product, nothing surprising there. We know that going to a cafe, get a drink of water, is going to cost us a lot less than our big bowl of delicious cafe latte. Different variable costs involved in producing each of the products as well. And because we understand our contribution, our unit or average contribution very well, we can go away and do those calculations, no problem at all. So unit contribution, we're looking at price less average variable cost. And total contribution, we are looking at unit contribution and multiplying that by the number of sales the cafe is making in units per month. Now, don't get confused about terminology like units. All we're talking about is units is cups of coffee, number of cafe mochas sold, number of glasses of orange juice sold. So unit contribution, the price of a cup of coffee less the average variable cost of producing it, gives us unit contribution. And then once we've found a unit contribution, we can find out our total contribution by multiplying that by our sales of that particular good per month. So let's have a look at that. Hot chocolate price $5.50 less $2.25 gives us a unit contribution of $3.25. If $3.25 is our unit contribution, all we're doing to find the total contribution is multiplying that by the number of hot chocolates sold. So $3.25 is a unit contribution. We multiply that by 1,140 to give a total contribution of $4,680. Fantastic money to be made in selling hot chocolates. Our latte, $5.75 is the selling price, $2.75 variable cost to produce the thing, unit contribution of $3. We sell 1,215 of those, leaving us with the total contribution that this product makes to paying the fixed costs or to the profit of the business. And so on, and so on, and so on. So total contribution is going to be determined by the unit contribution, the amount there, and the amount of sales that that particular product has per month. Unit contribution, you sometimes hear the terminology high margin and low margin goods. If the unit contribution is high, this is a high margin of profitability to the firm. If the unit contribution is low and low margin. Right, contribution analysis. What use does it have for the business? Right, different uses which you should be familiar with. Product portfolio management. Now this analysis can help firms decide which products should be given investment priority. So high margin goods which have a high unit contribution and sell well as well, may be given investment priority. So in general, products with a higher total contribution per time period tend to be given priority. Products earning lower levels of unit contribution will rely on high sales volumes in order to avoid being withdrawn or replaced by other products. Low unit contributions for a product need to be compensated with high sales volumes. Allocation of overheads to cost and profit centers. Now, contribution analysis. We're going to come back to this in more detail just a little bit later on. But contribution analysis can ensure that costs are being allocated fairly. Make or buy decisions. Contribution analysis can help managers decide whether it should produce the products or purchase them. So produce the products, make them, or purchase them, buy them from suppliers. And the relative difference between the unit contribution of making or buying is likely to determine that outcome. When we hit 5.7, we're going to look more in detail at make or buy decisions. Special order decisions. Now these occurs when customers place an order at a price that differs from the normal price charged by the firm. The price could be higher or lower. Higher if the customer perhaps requests added benefits such as short delivery times, or lower maybe because we're doing a special order where we're offering a bulk purchase discount to the customer. Now, whether the business takes on the special order is going to largely depend on the total contribution made from such a deal. And when we hit 5.3, we're going to look at this in a little bit more detail. Cost and revenue, they impact on so many business decisions that just pop up all over the place. And contribution cost pricing. Contribution analysis allows a business to identify the amount of profit it makes on an individual sale. And that's super important information. Super important information. It can help the firm in setting their prices to ensure that the contribution is made towards payment of fixed and indirect costs. Cost and profit centers, high level stuff again. Now our definition here is that these things are clearly identifiable, autonomous, they run independently, clearly identifiable, independent parts of an organization, and for which costs can be attributed. Profit centers, very similar. Again, they're clearly identifiable, they're independent, they're autonomous, and we can work out costs and revenues directly for each of these different parts of the organization. Just going into each of these in a little bit more detail. Now, a cost center is a department or unit of a business that incurs costs but is not involved in making any profit. Now, these costs are clearly attributed to the activities of that department, such as wages, salaries, lighting, components, and capital expenditure. Making these different sections of a business aware and accountable for their contribution towards a firm's costs may help managers to have better cost control. For example, to operate within their allocated budgets. So a manager will be assigned to monitor and manage the expenditure of the cost center, and that's going to allow the business to identify which departments are costing the firm the most money. Profit centers. This is a department or unit of a business that incurs both costs and revenues. They tend to be used by large businesses that are diversified or have a broad product mix. The costs and revenues are clearly attributed to the activities of that department or unit. And again, a manager is appointed to be responsible for the profit center, including having to produce an independent profit and loss account. Each profit center is responsible for contributing to the overall profits of the business. For example, a bank may split its profit centers based on geographical locations, so branch by branch, or alternatively it may be used on the source of revenue, such as private banking, commercial banking, foreign exchange, mortgages, loans, insurance, and financial planning. Now, both Starbucks and McDonald's operate profit centers on a branch-by-branch basis, and having profit centers allows an organization to identify the areas that generate the most and least revenue. Very important information for the organization to have. Now, the advantages of operating cost and profit centers are that it forces managers to be more accountable for their department's contribution towards the firm's costs, especially since the direct cost of production can clearly be allocated to cost and profit centers. Also, the business can identify areas of financial weakness. In large firms, it's not always clear whether a certain area of the business is making a loss, especially if the organization as a whole is profitable. Using cost and profit centers allows the business to identify sections or products of the organizations that are loss-making. Another advantage is that there's no need to fuss about whether a cost is fixed, variable, indirect, or direct. All costs can be allocated or spread across the various cost and profit centers of a business. Another advantage, departments and smaller teams tend to work much better than larger ones, which may suffer from organization and a lack of effective communication. And that's going to promote better team spirit within the different areas of an organization. Drawbacks. Allocating indirect costs such as rent, interest, insurance, and administrative costs is a subjective task. And we saw that when we looked at contribution pricing back in 4.4. That was the price unit of marketing. And that all means that it can be difficult to accurately calculate the overheads attributable to each cost centre. Another limitation, the profits of a profit centre can change simply because of how the fixed costs are being apportioned. Allocating a greater proportion of costs to a particular centre will reduce its profits, even though that does not represent its underlying trading position. Also, the performance of a cost centre can be changed by external factors beyond its control, such as higher raw material prices being charged by suppliers. And that bears no resemblance to the productivity and efficiency of the individual department. We need accurate and comprehensive data, so the data collection to be able to accurately account for costs and revenues of each centre is likely to be expensive and time consuming. Okay, 5.2, cost and revenues, done and dusted. I'm Mr. Burton. It was a pleasure to have you with me today. I hope you watch this on embedded within ibbusinessandmanagement.com. Summary notes, PowerPoints, all embedded there. Flashcards, interactive quizzes to make sure that you understand the topic, all there. I will see you next time for Unit 5.3 when we look at the all-important break-even analysis, probably the most often examined topic that the IB Business and Management course throws at students. See you next time, 5.3 break-even analysis.